Welcome, everybody. And I'm so happy that you're all here today. And we have an honored guest, um, Jeff Bickner, who is um, really a senior Dharma teacher at Everyday Zen. I believe he was Dharma transmitted by Norman Fisher. And Jeff's been practicing Buddhism for a very long time, since the early 70s, right? Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. And so Jeff's going to speak a little bit today, and we're going to have Zazen after for a few minutes, and then we'll have time for discussion and maybe some question and answer with Jeff. So I'm just going to give you the microphone, Jeff.
Okay. Well, it's so great to see all of you this afternoon. See new faces and some old friends. Um, this afternoon, I'm going to be presenting the case of Fayen's not knowing is most intimate, along with my thoughts on the case from the Shinji or Mana edition of the True Dharma Eye. It is also case 20 in the Book of Serenity, where it is called Daizhang's Nearness, translated by J.C. Clary. It is case 171 in the True Dharma Eye, is translated by Kaz Tanahashi, and John Dado Lori. And it's about an interaction between Daizhang and Fayen. As a historical note, Daizhang became Fayen's teacher, and Fayen went on to found one of the 5 Chinese schools of Zen, the Huayan school, which is based on the Avatamsaka Sutra, which is largely promoting Indra's net, or the interdependence of everything. When I used to think of Indra's net, I used to think, at each node there was a person. But I am, I lost my place here. Well, it used to be occupy a person, but actually everything occupies the nodes of the net. So it's like when you throw a rock into a pond and you have all those ripples that spread out. That's your karma spreading out too. In that way, every action taken affects the net. So now, let's talk about the interaction between Daizhang and Fayen. I will read you the case and commentary before I give my comments and questions. I'll be using the Mana edition of the True Dharma Eye, as well as from the Book of Serenity. The Book of Serenity has a commentary by Wan Song. So on every case he comments on it. And we'll get to that. First, as an intro to the case, I will offer the background. Fayen had decided to go on pilgrimage with a couple of other monks. While walking, they encountered a big storm, and the river that they wanted to cross was too swollen to cross. So they sought shelter at Daizhang's temple. Upon meeting Daizhang, the following dialogue happened. Daizhang asked Fayen, "Where are you going?" Fayen said, "Around on pilgrimage." Daizhang asked, "What is the purpose of pilgrimage?" Fayen responded, "I don't know." Daizhang said, "Not knowing is nearest." That's Clary's translation, but actually others have translated Daizhang as saying, "Not knowing is most intimate," which is now a common trope in Zen Buddhism. In the Book of Serenity, clearly translates Daizheng's response as not knowing is nearest, and translations are difficult and tricky. I'm not sure nearest would compel me to think as deeply about this koan as the word intimate. There's something about the word nearest that makes me think not quite there, or almost, or as close as you're going to get. If I look up intimate in my visual thesaurus, I also find words like close and near, but I also find familiar and knowledgeable. Now, knowledgeable is very interesting, since that would make Daizheng's response, not knowing is most knowledgeable. And that's how I think about this koan. Not knowing isn't ignorance. Not knowing perhaps implies an openness, an open mind, not letting assumptions get in the way of seeing things as they really are. Not thinking that you know best. Intimate, excuse me. Intimate can also mean enlightened. I'm going to read you a couple things from the Book of Serenity in the commentary. Nanshuan said, "The way is not in knowledge or in not knowing. Knowing is fake consciousness. Not knowing is indifference." Now when people hear it said that not knowing is nearest, that this is where Faiyang was enlightened, they immediately go over to just not knowing, not understanding, just this is it. They hardly realize that a phrase of the ancients covers everywhere. Like the sky supports everywhere, like the earth. And then further on in One Song's commentary, he says, "This I don't know, don't understand, is entirely transcendent. You must be utterly free from this minutest obstacles before you will reach the point of not knowing and not understanding." So, Clary has a great deal more to say in the commentary than the monobook. One thing that caught my attention was that excerpt, that this I don't know, don't understand, is entirely transcendent. You must be utterly free from the minutest obstacles before you will reach the point of not knowing, not understanding. Not understanding is interesting. Not knowing is what Faiyang said, either when he responded to the question about why he was going on pilgrimage. Let me give you an example. I started practice with Kobun Chino in Santa Cruz in the early 70s. And when I studied with Kobun, I heard a rumor that he was going to move to Taos. So in the spring of 1980, I asked him if he was moving to Taos, and he responded, "Nobody knows." That was so typical of Kobun. I now believe he pulled this from this koan of Faiyang. He didn't mean nobody understands. Difficult for me to say what Kobun really means. I would have had to have followed up, and even then I'm not sure I would have understood. It usually took me days of mulling over the things he said to satisfy myself. So it is with Daisheng and Faiyang. Impossible for me to say with certainty what went on between the two of them all those centuries ago. I can only offer my perspective. This is partly why I went to China with Kaz Tanahashi, the translator, and Joan Halifax about 20 years ago. If I couldn't be in China when these koans happened there at the time, I could at least go there now, see the Blue Cliff, visit Rujing's temple, and see where Dogen sat when he heard it drop off body and mind. I found it inspiring. It was a little different. Visiting a Heiji in Japan with Norman Fisher and some of our senior priests. That was for the pure joy of visiting Japan with Norman and Kate and Michael from our sister Sangha, Mountain Rain, in Vancouver. So did any of it help me understand the koans and the cases in our literature? Who knows? I went on pilgrimage like Fayan just to experience something with an open mind, like walking in nature and just absorbing what is in front of me. In a one-day sitting, Norman said, "Things do not exist in the way we think or assume they do. Nothing is self-evident." So not knowing is to let go of our assumptions that we know, that our take on anything is the only understanding that there is. It's often hard for me to not think I'm right. I know this about myself, so I can hopefully counter it when it arises. I try to see other people's view, even if I will never understand them, like anti-vaxxers or something. It just makes no sense to me. This dystopian country is difficult to grasp. I was born and raised and lived most of my life in California. At one point, many years ago, a friend of mine moved back to Texas, where he was from. He wanted to open a branch of my business, so I went to Houston to see what I thought of it. It's a very different culture, with a real Bible Belt experience. It seemed like every radio station was beaming out the Word of God. Very friendly people, but you don't see many Priuses or e-cars. I heard the other day that the price of gas is cheapest in Houston. That is all to say that my naivete is extensive. Now that I have traveled all over the country and the world, hoping to know more, and now I find myself wanting to not know. Good grief. Last year, I was invited to give a talk on faith and sustainability to 260 students at Berkeley. The sustainability part was part of my efforts in climate change and graduating from the master class of the Environmental Forum of Marin. The faith part was, I suppose, because of my being a Buddhist priest. And right off the bat, I said, faith is not knowing. I went on to say this is a good thing from my perspective, or the perspective of Zen Buddhism, since not knowing leaves your assumptions behind and you are open to experience without assuming you know it all. I called this from the Bible. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Hebrews 11:6. I still think faith is not knowing. This koan case continues with Fayen and his fellow pilgrims starting to depart Daishang's monastery when the storm had passed a few days later. Daishang went with them to the gate and asked, "I've heard you say the three realms are only mind and the myriad dharmas are only consciousness." Daishang then pointed to a rock outside the gate and said, "So do you say that this rock is inside or outside of the mind?" Fayan said, "Inside." Daishang said, "How can a pilgrim carry such a rock in his mind while he is on pilgrimage?" Fayan was dumbfounded, and he decided he would stay and had much to learn from Daishang. Daishang was the second patriarch of the Huayan school, although the whole school was later looked upon as Fayan being the founder. I think this is because he originally came from Central Asia and was more familiar with the Indian language and translated the Avatamsaka Sutra, also known as the Flower Garland Sutra. Norman just spent the last 4 months on the last chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Gandhavayuha Sutra. I should have said that Fayan's parents came from Central Asia, but he was born in the capital now known as Xi'an. The Huayan school only lasted 5 generations, yet was continued in Korea and other countries as it embodied some of the most central ideas that Buddha taught. This was because after the Tang dynasty, A new emperor shut down monasteries and was anti-Buddhist. Luckily, this only lasted for about 50 years. This was quite a change from Empress Wu, who had greatly supported Buddhism as a means of unifying all the disparate ethnicities in China. She named Faiyan as the national teacher. The anti-Buddhist regime was short-lived and was followed by the long Song dynasty. I am again thinking of Norman's seeing object in a different way, with not being self-evident. No independence, no unsupported existence, because everything is connected. If I pick up a rock and I think it's just a rock, and I then drop it in the stream will wear it down to become smooth. The stream will also have a mineral quality from the rock. That's a kind of reciprocity that I've been reading about in Braiding Sweetgrass, which is a wonderful book by Kimmerer, as well as her other book, The Sweet Berries. Norman has also recently said that Zen is a practice of phrases. So not knowing is most intimate can be one of those phrases that we practice with. How do we practice with it? It comes back to our intention and how we hone those intentions. I just mentioned Kimmerer, and she's a member of the citizen Potawatomi tribe. And the takeaway message is that I get from her is giving back to nature. Realizing what nature gives us and giving back. The land I live on is an acre and a half of forest, with 19 kinds of trees, but largely big redwood trees. So for me, reciprocity is taking care of the land and its creatures. The back cover of Service Berries is emblazoned with a pair of hands holding berries, and in big print it says, "All flourishing is mutual." Thinking about this as we appreciate walking through nature is a way of practicing not knowing is most intimate. Let me just get rid of this bar. Okay. I used to appreciate walking in the woods in summer months, but then I took courses in Santa Cruz at the Natural History Museum from David Aurora for a couple of winters. He's a famous mycologist, and I spent many rainy days with him hunting mushrooms. His book, Mushrooms Demystified, is a Bible for mushroom hunters. He wanted to call it the fungal jungle, but his publishers nixed that. So now I can appreciate all seasons in nature. And most of the oaks here where I live have succumbed to sudden oak death, and the stumps are full of mushrooms. I'm always discovering some new wonder here. Around me, I grow marionberries, raspberries, strawberries, Fuji apples, lemons, and many more, for which I am grateful. The raccoons insist I share with them as well. I found resonance the other night with Kaz Tanahashi and Peter Levitt when they read from their just-released book, Blossom Awakening, The Life and Poetry of Wandering Monk Saigyo. Saigyo is probably Japan's most famous poet from the 12th century, just before Dogen. Basho, 500 years later, saw Saigyo as his North Star. Saigyo was deeply connected to nature, living for 50 years as a wandering monk, deeply alone with nature, although we are never alone with nature. His poems are in the waka style of 17 syllables. Here's a short poem of his, although in English it won't be 17 syllables. It's titled, Pine Tree in Front of My Hut. If I find it difficult to stay here and drift away, this pine tree will be all alone. So once again, thank you for your patience and paying attention. I have truly enjoyed meeting this Sangha, and let us chant. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. Thank you. And now we'll have a period of zazen.
Thank you, Jeff. Kirk, are you going to ring some bells? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. We really appreciate you coming and sharing with us your vast knowledge. And also thank you for bringing the idea of not knowing into the room. Not knowing is most intimate has been something I've been thinking about since I started studying Zen, and applying it to different ideas in my life, different things that were going on. A lot of us in this Sangha are, not a lot of us, but maybe half of us in this Sangha are in recovery. So when I think about the idea of faith being not knowing, it's, the idea of changing your life by coming into recovery, having that faith that you don't know what this new life will bring, but, just being courageous enough to embark on something like recovery is, it's very much based on faith that these people who are, surrounding you and supporting you will, and all of the people that have come before in 12-step programs will be guides for you, even if it doesn't sound right to your ears. I think a real basic for me has been not knowing. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know what we're going to die of. We have to find our own faith, our own path in this life. And, I really experienced this with my daughter, who was very, very ill for a long time, and I didn't know when she was going to die, or if she was going to die, and that really was a big part of my my practice of realizing powerlessness in situations and allowing whatever's going to happen. Because I think as humans we're so used to wanting to manage and control, and because we don't want to suffer, we want to head things off at the pass all the time, and life just doesn't turn out to be like that. So anyway, I'm deeply touched by your talk, and thank you. I think, Kirk, you'd like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. I would like to say a few words. Jeff, thank you so much for coming. It's so generous of you. I just really appreciate it. Well, when we talk about not knowing, I think of Suzuki's beginner's mind. I mean, those seem kind of like parallels. Like both of those things are sort of rejecting this illusion of certainty. So, my question is, why is confusion so painful for me? I mean, really, the thing of I guess what it means is then you're not in control. I mean, most of my life, it seemed like I was surviving by predicting danger and sort of anticipating what's coming next. And so when I it feels like not understanding is actually some kind of a failure on my part. I mean, I'm not saying. The thing about the Dharma is that they're saying the opposite is true. Like being confused is a gate. Mystery. Being at ease in the mystery of the world could be a field of awakening. Not knowing is intimacy. So, but it's what it's calling up in me is that it's asking me precisely to relax the same mechanisms that actually kept me alive in my life. So, sometimes that's hard for me. Let's see. What else? Also, just this thing of your mind always wanting to have a story about what's going on in the world. Because I teach human anatomy, but part of what I teach is neurology. And when I first started teaching the class, I came to find out that it feels like when you see the world, like you're just looking out of the world from two windows that are in your head and you see the world, right? But actually, that's not what's happening. It's like the light goes in, it sends electrical impulse to your brain, and your brain recreates its own story inside of your head. So your mind is always, it's like a interpretation of events that are actually happening outside of you. So it just feels like, and also I've seen this in people that are getting demented, where they actually can't remember what happened, but their mind makes up a story about what happened because you just want to be, I mean, everybody's trying to defend themselves in the world. At any rate, it's really hard sometimes for me to just relax into not knowing anything at all because it feels like I'm going to die or something. So I don't know if any of that registers with anybody, but it's a vulnerable spot to be in. I'll say that. Jeff, let's see, you're actually, can you unmute? Somehow you're accidentally muted. Oh, there you go. Okay, good.
Not being in control is the definition of the classic acid bummer.
You didn't take acid, did you, Jeff?
Well, in college, maybe I did.
It's okay. I took a little myself.
But that was explained to me in psychology class. And I also say that about faith, that faith a lot of times is we build faith from experience, and having something, seeing a lot of other people having building faith and using faith in recovery. That's great. That's really great.
It's Jeff. Thank you so much for coming today, and so let's just open it up for comments or feelings, or
Sure.
you can talk about anything anybody wants to. But Jeff, I'm going to let you call on people. All right?
You can raise your hand.
Before we do that, I have been asked by Laura Burgess to say hello to you and your wife. And she normally comes, but she wasn't able to come today, and she was bummed. And she wanted to make sure that I gave you her best.
Well, that's wonderful. I love Laura.